Every great civilization in human history has had people who believe their civilization is fair and free and a force for good. Every great civilization in human history has had very high levels of education, and with very high levels of education come very low levels of crime, low levels of depression, low levels of violence, and high levels of satisfaction. There is nobody on either side of government who understands what makes a civilization great and what makes citizens believe in that civilization. But I do. This is my grand plan for Australia's future. I have 5 steps to rebuild our country and launch our civilization towards the stars. Number 1, education is the be-all and end-all. Number 2, reunite the family to strengthen our children's minds. Number 3, pivot to science. Australia must become a high-tech country. Number 4, unite Southeast Asia to counter the China menace. We need closer ties with our Southeast Asian neighbours. Number 5, long-term planning. We need a realistic and achievable plan for the next 500 years. Every great civilization the world has ever known began as a tiny little village. Australia has been blighted by small-mindedness for too long. This is my grand plan for Australia's future. Number 1, education is the foundation of our country. Our children need teachers, not activists. Australia can only be strong, prosperous and happy if our children believe that this country is a force for good in the world. Our country cannot be strong if our schools, universities, politicians and media relentlessly tell our children that this country is a stolen, racist, misogynist, Islamophobic, homophobic, xenophobic cesspit. So extreme are their beliefs, they even want to ban everyday words like mother and father, and are hell-bent on destroying the family, our civilization, and our children's futures. Our children must have the freedom to speak openly about current issues without being called racist, transphobic, or bullied online by the cancel culture brigade, many of whom are school teachers. In addition to being told by activist teachers that our Western culture is evil, our children's perceptions of reality are being distorted by social media. Our children are seeing endless images of influencers, celebrities, and other vacuous twits. And this makes children feel that only the most attractive, popular, or famous people have any value. Many children are left feeling depressed, worthless, and sometimes suicidal. Many 8 and 9-year-old children have committed suicide, and many more will do so. We must give our children a balanced and honest view of the world by teaching them, when they reach the appropriate age, about the poverty, violence and wars overseas, and contrasting it with the peace, prosperity and freedom in the West. We must encourage immigrants to tell our youth about the horrors of their former countries and why they moved to the West. Our children will feel immense gratitude for being born in a Western country and will treasure our Western freedoms. Ignorance is more costly to any state than education. So said the great Booker T. Washington, former slave, author, educator, and statesman. Today, we rank 39th out of 41 OECD nations for education. This is horrifying. This means that those who are born into wealth and privilege will pay for the best schools for their children, will have high-paying jobs, and will have lives of wealth and privilege. But Australia has had a permanent underclass for centuries, and it will continue to have a permanent underclass if we do not value education in the same way that our Southeast Asian neighbours value education. I have lived in a great many places, including areas where 10-year-old children run riot all night long, vandalising, breaking into businesses and setting cars on fire. This is because their parents and their parents and their parents were uneducated. We have a moral obligation to provide them with proper teachers so they can understand the belief systems and the worldview that leads people to plan long-term, sacrifice pleasure in the present moment, and drag themselves out of extreme hardship to a successful, fulfilling and happy life. For over 20 years, our students' school marks have continued to plummet, while their teachers have increased their level of deranged activism, causing our students' levels of mental illness, bullying, and suicide attempts to increase dramatically. I propose a school curriculum that teaches the basics of human history in primary school. Just one single hour of the history of various great civilizations. They will see the similarities and some differences, and they will have a broader understanding of life. When they realized that the Chinese civilization began with the flooding of the river at Shanghai, agriculture leading to industry and a mighty civilization, and when they believed that the Indian civilization began with the flooding of the Indus River, leading to agriculture, industrialization, and great civilizations, and when they believed that the Middle Eastern civilizations began with the flooding of the Nile River, leading to agriculture, industrialization, and great civilizations, when they see the similarities between all civilizations, then they will come to accept the differences. Then they will contribute to our great civilization. Because Western civilization is based simply upon looking at every single civilization in the world and every single civilization in history and taking all the best features of each civilization and avoiding the worst features. Currently, our children are being indoctrinated with deranged activist theories and being told that anyone who disagrees is a racist, a bigot, intolerant, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist, a cisgender something or other, a ham sandwich, or whatever other deranged insults are in vogue. The more different viewpoints our children listen to, the wiser they'll become. I propose teaching our children, at approximately the age of 14, an introduction to 6 or 7 different philosophies. Just one single hour of Taoism, one single hour of Confucianism, one single hour of cynicism, one single hour of Stoicism, one single hour of Native American beliefs, one single hour of Epicureanism. By teaching our children just one single hour of 6 or 7 different philosophies, straight away they will understand that there are many different ways to look at the world. In the Navajo culture, they believe that humans are born bad, yet in the Confucian culture, they believe that humans are born good. Navajo believe that people can only turn out good if they are educated. Confucians believe that people will turn out good regardless. Our children must be allowed to discuss the different philosophies, the different beliefs, and the different ways of seeing the world. Then they will end up as balanced, broad-minded, optimistic human beings, not deranged, screeching, depressed, suicidal activists. Education is the purpose of school, not activism. Children are being taught what to think, not how to think. Children are being taught by deranged activist school teachers with no knowledge of history, no ability to understand the long-term consequences of their actions, and no capacity for rational thought. They are being taught there is only one acceptable way to do things, only one acceptable way to think, and anybody who doesn't follow that one acceptable way to think and one acceptable way to act must be vilified, cancelled, bullied, harassed, and otherwise mistreated. The greatest rulers in human history, from Cyrus the Great to Genghis Khan to Elizabeth Tudor, were taught with nothing more than a good teacher and a textbook. It is absolutely critical that we teach our children to see through the indoctrination and brainwashing that caused so much catastrophe in the 20th century. Communism and Nazism both indoctrinated millions of people with endless propaganda, which led those who had been indoctrinated to kill millions of people. Less deadly, but still with devastating long-term consequences, advertising, TV, and social media with its algorithms and bots have so twisted people's view of reality that over 3 million Australian adults are on prescription antidepressants. Our rates of depression, anxiety, violence, and ice addiction are skyrocketing, and an increasing number of people are murdering their partners, children, or entire families. But why is this? Because for over 100 years, the advertising industry has bombarded people's every waking moment with images of unrealistically successful people. From the extremely attractive, well-dressed models on posters, to the drivel on radio, to unrealistic depictions of normal people living normal lives in cinema, TV, and the internet. Hundreds of articles have been written about how modern films and TV shows have given people unrealistic expectations in life, leading to depression and feelings of inferiority. But the roots of the problem began 100 years earlier. The advertising industry has spent several $1 trillion using the most cutting-edge psychology to manipulate our minds. We must teach our children how to think, so they learn to recognize all the ways advertisers, social media, and politicians use distortion and propaganda to manipulate our view of the world. When children have a better understanding of reality, their expectations will be more realistic, and their rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide will decline rapidly. A clearer view of reality will give them a more positive mindset, and levels of happiness and social harmony will increase markedly. All this will help our country become happier, healthier, and more prosperous. Our children's education is Australia's greatest responsibility. Nothing is more important to our country's future than to grow our children's minds. To do this, we must get back to basics and learn from the wisdom of ancient times. Every great emperor, empress, pharaoh, king, queen, or ruler in human history searched far and wide for the best possible teachers for their children. They knew that only the best possible education could give their children the best chance in life. A great education requires only a great teacher, writing implements, and a student. That's it. That's the be-all and end-all of good education, and it has worked flawlessly for thousands of years. We've had 50 years of bullshit New Age theories. Absolutely no competitive games of any sort. Everybody gets a participation medal. Red ink is psychologically damaging. There's no such thing as gender. Any criticism of other cultures is racism. Violent criminals are really just victims of society's prejudice and other nonsense. This deranged activist drivel has caused relentlessly plummeting grades, a catastrophic rise in depression, bullying, and suicide, and children who have learnt to hate their own culture. Enough of the bullshit. It's time for common sense. This absolute travesty of an education system is being championed by teachers who are barely literate and totally unfit to teach. The human brain is the most complex structure in the known universe. It needs the world's best teachers, not activists. Mapping an entire human brain would need a dataset comparable to the amount of digital content generated in a year by planet Earth, according to Professor Jeff Lichtman, Harvard neuroscientist. Furthermore, such vast sums of money are being wasted in the education sector that we can easily afford to dramatically increase teacher salaries to attract the world's best teachers. Bear in mind that the country will save billions of dollars down the road by having happier, more mentally healthy adults, and by making teaching a highly desirable profession. Over the next 30 years, we must raise teaching to the highest status profession in our land. Absolutely nothing is more important to our country's future than our children's minds. We are currently spending billions attempting to curtail violent crime, drug and alcohol dependency, mental illness, and many other epidemics, all because our children were not educated properly to begin with. The most educated citizens in the world create the fewest problems for society. Singapore has the lowest murder rate in the world, the lowest rate of violent crime, and unbelievably low rates of drug dependency and mental illness, as well as having the highest average salary in the world with the highest living standards. How? By treating education as the most important issue in the country. In Australia, around 50 students get the highest possible HSC marks every year. They choose to become neuroscientists, physicists, venture capitalists, doctors, but when our best and brightest say, "I want to become a teacher," then we will have succeeded. Two of the greatest teachers in history are also the most relevant for our time. Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington were both former slaves, but their incredible determination to succeed and their determination to achieve racial harmony through moderate means, education, and entrepreneurship stand in stark contrast to the screeching activists of today. It is absolutely critical that our students learn their story, learn their ways of thinking, and emulate their success. Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, Korea. All these countries have had staggering levels of success and ultra low levels of crime because they have the highest achieving students in the world who also love their own countries. Let's follow their wisdom.